And here we are in the Runnin with the Herd podcast, powered up by Herd Nation, a part of the Rivals Network, and sponsored by Mike Gwynn Insurance Agency. I'm your host and the producer of the Runnin with the Herd podcast, Aaron Coleman, alongside my co-host Josh Stowers from Herd Nation. Josh, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well. We had the bye week last week, undefeated there, and we will go into hostile territory against the number 3 team in the nation, the Ohio State Buckeyes, down in Columbus, Ohio. Just a reminder for all of our viewers out there, we are streaming live on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and we are streaming live for the first time on YouTube. So check that out. All Herd fans, go to YouTube, subscribe, and definitely join in because we're definitely trying to grow that channel there. You'll see all of the archive broadcast of the Runnin with the Herd podcast over on YouTube. So be sure to check that out. We're going to be bringing in Rob Oller from the Columbus Dispatch here in just a couple of seconds. And we're going to get some insight into the Ohio State Buckeyes and just exactly what we're facing here. And Josh, real quick before we bring in Rob, I mean, obviously it's a very tough task going against Ryan Day's bunch, but with the Herd having the bye week, what do you think their mindset is going into this game against the Buckeyes?
I mean, I think Coach Huff kind of mentioned it yesterday in his press conference. It was just about getting better this week. I mean, they gave them, a full 2 weeks basically to, a week off to get healthy and kind of, fix some things that they've had through the first couple games and really just give them a full week. He mentioned yesterday, Monday is usually like a laid back practice, because of coming off a game. He said, but this week, we're coming off a bye week. It gave them, they were full blow on Monday, so that kind of gave them an extra day of preparation for Ohio State. And like I said, just about getting better and playing their game. I mean, you can't. Obviously, it's a mountain of a task. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, it's. I mean, they're loaded, but it's just really about playing our game and trying to cut down on the mistakes and take advantage of their mistakes. And I think that's about the best thing you can aim for. I mean, obviously you want to go in and get a win, no question.
Sure.
But you can't worry about that at this point. I mean, that's like I said, you got to go in, play your game, do your job, and see where things fall at the end of the game.
Right, certainly. And right now, the strength of our team is the defense. And, when you held Virginia Tech in check for basically 3 quarters, you're doing something right. And obviously, it's a very, very tall task to go up against guys like Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Travion Henderson, Quinshawn Junkins, all those guys from Ohio State that I mentioned, Emeka Ibuka. I mean, those are just the guys I know. I mean, they have a whole list of guys who could play. And speaking of the Buckeyes, let's bring him in now. Sports columnist for the Columbus Dispatch, Rob Oller, joining us here in the live stream. Rob, welcome.
Guys, thanks for having me. Should be a fun Saturday, at least for the Buckeyes, I think.
Yeah, it should be a fun Saturday. Thanks for taking some
time. We hope not.
Me. I certainly appreciate it. And Rob, the Buckeyes are coming off of a decisive win against Western Michigan. What do you think some of the weaknesses are for the Buckeyes? I mean, obviously they have a lot of strengths with, the running game, with the receivers, all of that. If there's any sort of, issue or thing that the Buckeyes need to work on moving forward, what do you think that is?
Well, it's interesting you say that because we could just rewind a year ago and it would be the same issue. Maybe not as drastic this year, but last year the offensive line was pretty suspect. Probably the worst performance. I've covered the team for almost 30 years, and I think the game against Missouri, the bowl game, Cotton Bowl, was probably the worst offensive line performance I've ever seen from an Ohio State team. So they've upgraded a little bit. They got the Alabama kid, Seth McLaughlin. They've got they're better. How good are they? How physical are they when they face a Michigan, a Penn State? That remains to be seen. So I would say the offensive line is probably the weak point. Now, weak is a relative term, right? I mean,
Right.
we're kind of nitpicking here. And, Coach Huff said it's the best team he's ever seen on tape. I don't know if that's a little gamesmanship, if he's going a little Lou Holtz out there in the past of, this is the greatest team in the history of football, setting it up that way. He coached at Bama, did he not?
He did.
He did.
He knows all the tricks. He knows what to say. So, but the other question, there hasn't been a lot of chink in the armor on this guy yet. But Will Howard, I'm kind of a wait and see guy on this. Have I liked what I've seen? Yes, especially his ability to run. I don't think he's a whole lot different than Kyle McCord, quite honestly, last year's QB, except that he has some wheels and he can get you that tough yardage when the passing game isn't there on a particular play, a 3rd and 3 or whatever. He can run and get you the first down. He tends to, now they've run a lot of RPOs, so it's hard to tell so far, but he tends to lock onto a receiver. And, in the first 2 games, Akron, Western Michigan, and maybe Marshall, because it looks like Marshall's maybe secondary is in. I'm not sure. These guys are just running open. So he doesn't really have to look off and go to his, progression in the second read. The guys are just open. I mean, Jeremiah Smith's open. Emeka Ibuka's open. So he just locks on them and throws to them. How's that going to work against, again, a Michigan, playoff? I mean, this is Ohio State. You're already looking at like the teams like Georgia. That's who you look to and you talk about when you're Ohio State.
Yeah, the one thing with Will, Rob, is that so far through 2 games, he hasn't turned the ball over. I mean, obviously, that's the most important thing, I think, for a quarterback, especially a new quarterback. But one of the notes that I made for him was the fact that he could move the ball with his feet too. I mean, like you said, on 3rd down, things like that. I mean, that creates issues because you got to worry about keeping him in the pocket and, just kind of maybe spy somebody, which kind of takes somebody, away from, the other guys. I mean, like, it's not like, it's a 1-man show there. I mean, you could literally, like you said, rip off 4 or 5 guys that are just straight up weapons. So,
right.
I think it'll be interesting to see if Marshall, if they can get pressure on him and heat him up a little bit, see how he reacts to that.
I think that's your best bet is to, go at him hard because, you're probably not going to win the game. Weird things happen, but why not take some risks? I mean, what's the difference between, 56-3 and 56-10? I just think you've got to take some risks to, and throw them off. And interestingly, I thought Akron and Western Michigan, early on, at least offensively showed a little something. Now they didn't put it up on the scoreboard, but they moved the ball a little bit, especially Akron. But you'll notice I didn't point any weaknesses out on Ohio State's defense because I just don't think there are any. We've talked about offense and, again, nitpicking weaknesses. I wouldn't even say there are weaknesses on offense, but defensively, it's just lockdown. That's where Marshall's going to really struggle. And not so much, how do you keep these skill guys like Jeremiah Smith from scoring? Yeah, that's always an issue. But the defense is like, it doesn't really matter if you're never going to, get into the red zone.
We are streaming live. Yep. We're streaming live in the Runnin with the Herd podcast, powered up by Herd Nation, part of the Rivals Network, sponsored by Mike Gwynn Insurance Agency, streaming live on X, Facebook, and YouTube. Go over there and check out that YouTube channel. We have all of the broadcasts, including the one that we're doing right now, on that YouTube channel. So go hit that subscribe button and give it a follow and check out all of our awesome content. Rob, we had mentioned Jeremiah Smith in the open. I mean, obviously comes in with a lot of hype coming in, 5-star recruit from Florida. What has been the most impressive thing about him thus far?
Well, if you'd asked me that 2 weeks ago, after the first play when he dropped the ball right in his hands, it probably would have gone for 6 and then has a false start penalty. It's like, well, even the best, even the 5 stars get freshman jitters, but he put that behind him really quickly. And I just think he has a pro mindset. I mean, he's you've heard about, he was sort of born older. He was born into football older. He just gets it. He understands the game. He understands how to prepare. And then you just look at that speed. I mean, I don't know if you saw the first touchdown against Western where he kind of a little dig route. He just takes it and then just runs away from guys.
Yep.
And so I don't know if I haven't seen really the spectacular catches yet. I'm sure they'll come. And I've done this long enough that I'm always a little suspicious of the guys come in 5-star. I'm very much of a prove it to me guy. I want to see it on the field during a game, and I've seen it with him. So he's legit. I mean, he's getting all the attention. And Emeka Ibuka was was the guy who's no slouch. I mean, he's going to be an NFL player, and you're really like, okay, yeah, he's good, but we got this Jeremiah Smith guy now. A little bit of it is new kid on the block, right? And, that whole thing going on. But, they are loaded at wide receiver, and they've got now Quinshon Judkins, who's maybe better than Travion Henderson. I mean, it's sort of Mr. Inside, Mr. Outside, but Judkins showed last week that he can also be Mr. Outside. So, I mean, I don't know how you pick your poison if you're Marshall. I mean, And I think Marshall's strength, correct me, I'm trying to find it. Is it maybe the linebackers? Is it maybe the defensive tackle might be pretty decent? I don't know. Well, I mean, where are we on that? I mean, Ohio State, I think, has mentioned, they've got pretty good linebackers.
I'd say up front is probably our strongest piece of the defense at the moment. Linebackers, we've got a couple guys that can play. They just haven't played a lot, so that's really the biggest part of that. But as far as experience and production, I think up front is probably our best, the best piece of the defense at this point. I mean, it's kind of the same way in the secondary. We've got some guys that can play and that have played. It's just a matter of production, kind of catching up with the snaps that they've seen.
I think they mentioned, what is it, Mike Green?
Mike Green, yep.
The guy,
yep.
3.5 sacks. Now maybe that came against Stony, again that first win. But they've mentioned him as a decent player. So now he's in the middle of everything. Is that going to matter? I don't know. But you guys are going to see as a colleague of mine says, you're going to see a juggernaut with 2 G's.
Yeah. Green had a couple of he had some pressures and a sack and a half against Virginia Tech 2 weeks ago. So he's able to do it against some major competition. I don't think he's ever seen anybody quite like the Buckeyes, but you never know. But going into this, Rob, it's possible that the Buckeyes defense will see not one but 2 quarterbacks. Stone Earl is the starter. Came from North Texas University. Braylon Braxton came from Tulsa, a little bit more athletic. Has Coach Day said anything about the quarterback system and some of the offensive guys for Marshall at all, or what has he said about those guys?
Not too much. I don't think he got asked a lot, honestly. I mean, it's a little bit of focus on what Ohio State can do or how fast they can get out. And if I was Marshall, I'd be like, oh, dang it, because the problem for the last year for Ohio State up until Western Michigan was getting off to these slow starts. They never had more than 14 points in the first quarter and were down against some teams that they shouldn't have been losing to. But then they just turned on the Jets against Western Michigan and had 21 points, boom, boom, boom. And so they kind of got off the snide there. So that would be a concern. But Coach Day hasn't really talked about it. I think Coach Knowles talked about, I think that the one kid, is it Stone Earl, you say?
Yeah.
Can he run a little bit? Maybe?
He can run a little bit.
Yeah, he can. And that's always, that's been the bugaboo for Ohio State for a decade. More of a run first quarterback than kind of a guy who can run. Those guys have caused fits, relatively speaking, for Ohio State. But I think, his ability to just kind of run, if it's there, Stone, that maybe is there. I don't think he had a great game against Virginia Tech in terms of percentage. I think he struggled there. Yeah, and and you're gonna have Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau coming at you from the ends. That's gonna be a challenge. So I mean, it could be a shutout. I think I picked a touch. I think I have Marshall getting 7. That was just my prediction. And that could come late, or maybe it comes in the first series when they're still sort of. And what I found with Ohio State is the Western Michigans, the Akrons. This is their. I don't want to make it sound like the big arrogant thing here, but it's their bowl game. It's Ohio State. They've been looking at that, and so they come out fired up. Depth isn't as much of an issue in the first quarter. They can script plays, and they kind of hang tough typically early, and then lack of depth, just getting worn down, is just kind of the thrill of being in the in the shoe wears off a little bit. Then you're just playing football. And, Ohio State's depth and 5-star and just all that kind of comes to fruition.
Could be a slightly different story than it was in 2004. You were still covering the team then. And I was actually a freshman in college as a sophomore in college, I should say, when that happened. And that it was tied up 21-21. And I'm like, wow. And then Mike Nugent kicked the big 55-yard field goal.
That was a heck of a game. And that was, when Jim Tressel era was full swing, like he could do no wrong. And, they'd lost a lot of guys, to the NFL. They lost some key players, but still you're Ohio State. That was down to the wire, and Nuge has to win it. Then again, the Tressel teams played so close to the vest.
They really did.
He tended to allow teams to stay in it. Right, a little bit, and he didn't lose most of them. He won most of those close calls.
One of his signature wins was, I think it was 10-7 or something like that over Purdue.
Right, that was Holy Buckeye.
Yeah,
that was famous in 2002. Well, they called them the Luckeyes in 2002 because they just pulled everything out of their rear ends, late in games, and won it all. Even that championship game with Miami was like. The late flag and just everything that could possibly happen in that game happened. But that's still probably the most beloved Ohio State team since I've been around, is that 2002 team, even more than 14.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Rob, you mentioned the defense earlier, and that's one of the things that I looked at, and it's not just, like you mentioned earlier, as far as Marshall goes, one or two guys. I mean, they have guys at all 3 levels that can make plays. And, you mentioned Sawyer, and there's the Styles kid. It looks like he's been fairly productive through 2 games. They've got a couple other kids that I know can run and make plays there at linebacker. And then in the secondary, you've got Denzel and Caleb, and those guys are NFL guys. I mean, honestly, both of those guys, Caleb specifically is probably a first-round guy. I mean, it's just a freak because of the size and the speed he's able to play with. For Marshall fans and stuff like that, in terms of play style. I mean, obviously everybody knows they've got guys, but I mean it's like play style on defense. Can you talk about what we may expect from them?
Well, Jim Knowles, he likes to turn it loose, but he also likes to keep some things in his back pocket, so to speak. So I'm not exactly sure what you're going to see. I think areas of supposed weakness, that's where you want to, in games like this, you want to kind of work on those. So I still think getting pressure. I mean, I think they want to turn Caleb Downs loose even more. I mean, he made a play against Western Michigan, was NFL plus. I mean, he just came up and just delivered a hit. And kind of the first game he was quiet. So to your point, those guys are NFL ready. Denzel, of course, missed most of the last game with a targeting call, so he'll be hungry to get out, which is unfortunate for the herd. He's going to be raring to go. And then like Tyleek Williams, Ty Hamilton, those are guys you don't really hear about, but man, they are studs. And you guys probably know, Larry Johnson, the defensive line coach, is like one of the best in the business. They just kind of do their job. So in terms of technique and what you're going to see, I think you're going to see even more pressure. I think they're going to ramp it up a little bit just to see, because your quarterback, I don't know, where he stands on I don't know how he's done in the pocket, but I think they're going to come after him. That would be my guess. And they don't tip their hand real well, but And the other thing is the linebackers you haven't heard a lot about with Ohio State, even in the last few years. You know, it used to be linebacker U, but it's to a certain extent. It's not Penn State, but they've been pretty good. But in just recent years, kind of So maybe something with the linebackers, you know, having them come up and see what they can do. There's just no weakness on defense. So it really, I hate to say this for Marshall fans, but there's really nothing Marshall can do because there's just no weak link on the backside, up front, you know, on the ends. They got it all. And when you have $20 million, you can throw in NIL money. It kind of helps.
Yeah, NIL money. It's been a big topic as of late. I mean, Coach Huff talked about a possible NIL deal with Tudor's Biscuit World. I don't know if you've ever been there, Rob, but
I have once. Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you think of it?
I thought it would just be all biscuits, man. It was sort of like, you know, you get some breakfast sandwiches and stuff like that. I do remember that. I thought, you know, man, it was in the Holler, the one I went to. It was up around between Huntington, I think, and Charleston, off this little road, whatever, 35 or something in there. I mean, you'd had to get lost to find it. So I wandered in there not knowing what to expect. I'd never been in there. It was fine. I mean, you know, it wasn't mama's cooking, but, you know, I'm sure that the coach, you know, would stick to his word and take care of those Buckeyes that decide to come down there and feed them well.
Yeah, he certainly would. And just a reminder for all of our viewers out there on Facebook, X, and YouTube, you could comment. You could leave a comment for Josh, Rob, or myself. Frank Carone chiming in on YouTube. He says, I am an Ohio State fan, and God bless Marshall. November 14th, 1970. Never forget. So thank you, Frank, for the kind words there. Obviously, the crash is something near and dear to every Marshall fan's heart. You know, I've attended a couple of different 75 games throughout my time, and, you know, we definitely appreciate that, Frank. But, I mean, when you look at this game, Rob, I mean, obviously, you know, there's a big gap in talent, obviously. But, like, what else are you looking for in this game that could possibly just maybe make it a little bit interesting in terms of, you know, what you could see from Marshall or, I mean, you know, Ohio State? Like, what do you think could make this game an interesting one?
Wow. Well, I talked about Will Howard. If he has a bad game, I think Josh talked about he hasn't turned the ball over. Well, you know, let's say he has a 3-pick game, something like that. I don't necessarily expect that because, I mean, I think you'd have to get some balls bouncing off guys' hands into Marshall defenders' hands. I'm not sure Marshall quite has the capability, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the secondary to really kind of make plays against these Ohio State receivers. But you never know if Howard's off, if he throws into, you know, into traffic. He hasn't really shown yet that he can throw the long ball well. So if he they try to go deep and maybe he gets picked. I think that can stem the bleeding a little bit. That's probably going to happen. So that's what I would say. I don't see them really shutting down just because you've got these two backs. If it was just Trevion Henderson, you could kind of control him because teams have. But the double tailback thing, it's like you got two different looks like Michigan had last year, and that's just tough to defend. And then you got 3 tight ends that are not incredible. Their tight ends aren't up to the level they've had in the last 3 to 5 years, but they're not bad. So it's like, and you got 3 of them that you're just going to shuffle in. I think I would say that's the deal. Outside of that, I mean, unless you're talking, I'm not going to say the I word, injury word. You know, you lose a couple guys go down, that can change things, right? And I'm just trying to be real here. That realistically, that I think you're looking at Will Howard and maybe the offensive line, the 2 weaknesses we talked about at the beginning, maybe them regressing a little bit, maybe coming off, the bye week, right? You know, just kind of not quite having it together. I guess.
Yeah.
That's your best. That's your rusty. How's that? A little rusty.
Best bet. Yeah. Well, Rob, thank you very much for joining us. I certainly appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again soon if our paths cross ever again. If Marshall and Ohio State basketball ever play or something like that, I'll definitely give you a call.
Hey, it'd be a great story if Marshall could shock the world. Yeah, I'm always looking for a good. I'm not always looking for a good story, so I'm not saying I'm pulling for the herd, but I always like good games. Let's just see a good game.
You're on record. You're pulling for the herd. Just go ahead and say it.
No, I hope they don't see this in Columbus.
I am for it against the coach today right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Yep. That was Rob Oller of the Columbus Dispatch, longtime sports columnist over there. You could give him a follow over at R. Oller or Rob R. Oller at dispatch.com. You can follow him on X as well as Facebook, and you can read all of his stuff over on the Dispatch website. Final thoughts here as we wrap this up, Josh.
I mean, it's like I said earlier, and, kind of like to echo what Rob has, basically hinted at. I mean, it's a tall task. I mean, I'm not sure where the spread's at now. It opened up at 39.5. So, I mean, clearly odds makers are not looking at it to be a good game. Yeah, like I said, you can't even really worry about all that. I mean, I know that's easier said than done. I mean, the guys realize they're going to play Ohio State. I mean, the fans realize that. The coaching staff realizes that. I mean, it's no secret,
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you just kind of got to go play your game. I mean, just go in, like I said, do your job. And, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, sometimes it's guys are just better. I mean, and I'm not saying that's the case. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not the case either. But, I mean, it's like I said, you can't go in with some kind of defeatist attitude right off the rip. I mean, especially if you're the ones playing. I mean, it's easier for fans to do that, but I mean, if you're the guys out there on the field, I mean, and you already think, well, this guy's going to beat me off the snap, then why the hell are you even out there? I mean, you're just wasting your time and wasting, scholarship money and whatever else. I mean, you should be out there trying to win the ball game. I mean,
right.
It is what it is. So, I'll be there. I'll be
there too.
It's I'm not going to not go just because of who we're playing or an expected loss or whatever like that. I mean, I'm going to be screaming we are Marshalls, no matter what. So it's a tall task. I mean, like I said, I want to see a good game. I want to see us not go out and just play bad. I mean, if Ohio State plays well and just beats us, that's one thing. But if we go in, and just like against Virginia Tech, I mean, yeah, they beat us in the second half in some ways. I mean, they started, I think they wore on us a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, we beat ourselves a little bit too. I mean, drop balls, letting the punt return. I mean, just not getting guys on the ground. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, it's, we didn't do that. The reason when we went to, Notre Dame, granted, was a different animal than then. But, we played our game out there. I mean, we played a fairly clean game out there. And not only that, I mean,
no turnovers.
We just out physical them. I mean, I don't know that we're going to be able to do that on Saturday. Again, like I said, it's a different animal.
Yeah.
But it's all about mentality, man. I mean, if you go in with the wrong mentality, then you're just wasting our time. If you go in with the mentality of, we both bleed red, and this guy's playing the same sport that I'm playing, and he's played it for just as long as I have, then I mean, like I said, like Rob said, it'd be a great story, and something that I was there in South Bend, and that's something I'll never ever forget. And I promise you, it'll be the same situation for me if we roll out there with a win on Saturday. So
very good.
We'll see how it plays out.
We'll see how it plays out, exactly. And next time we will talk to you will be when we preview Western Michigan on September the 28th. We'll talk to you then. But until then, we thank you for watching. We thank you for chiming in. And the archive of this can be seen on both the Old Fairfield board and the Herd Nation board over on herdnation.com, which is part of the Rivals Network. Special thanks to our guest, Rob Oller, for joining us in the podcast. For Josh Stowers, I'm Aaron Coleman saying so long. Thanks for watching. And as always, go Herd.